medical school, I had the pleasure of going to a week-long retreat with Dr. Pratap. And I presented that dilemma to Dr. Pratap, and I said, hey, life is basically tragic. And there are things that we can't seem to avoid, such as birth and death, illness, as well as aging. Those are things, 4 things the Buddha said no one can escape. And if we reflect that upon our lives, you can see it as being tragic, or maybe later on we'll see it a little differently after the workshop. So I said, I'm trying to choose a residency. I'm not sure what I want to go into. I like rehab medicine. I like working with people with disabilities. However, too much tragedy. In rehab medicine, you're running into patients with spinal cord injury, with brain injury, with amputations, all kinds of pain syndromes, and it's just, life to me was too tragic. And Dr. Pratap gave me his usual one-word answer. Well, tragedy is love. And I said, Dr. Pratap, could you explain that? And I challenged him a little, and I remember we were over at the Sky Foundation, and it's been a very long time since I took a vacation, so I had cornered this guru, and I said, I'm going to get some answers today. And he told me, well, it's true, tragedy occurs, but tragedy is love. And I challenge him, and I say, well, what about this, what about that? I'll try to argue. He wouldn't budge from his stance. Tragedy is love, and so is life. And so I like to begin with this premise. In fact, I'm going to use the blackboard if you don't mind. Oops. Okay, so I said to him, life is tragic. I was very depressed. I was very sad. And then he said to me, well, so he says to me, well, tragic events lead to love. So I had to think about that because I didn't quite get a strong enough explanation. Okay, so I thought, well, let's see. What are the tragedies? Tragedies, the main ones are birth, death, all right, aging, and illness. So I thought and I thought and I thought, and I said, well, aging and birth, okay, are inevitable, but so are death and illness. Well, what can we possibly learn about aging and death? Well, when we were born, all right, we need people to take care of us. And many of you have children. You relearn again the joy and love of taking care of another helpless individual. Same thing is if you are sick. If you are ill, disabled, or have a rehabilitation issue, what happens is that you need to be either taken care of or you need to take care of someone who is ill. So caring is an element of love. All right? So I got one component of it. But what about death? And death is sort of tragic. Can't see any other way about it. And aging is something that's inevitable. So after thinking for a long time, I figured aging and death have something in common in that these two events that are inevitable teach us how to let go. So to me, that's the second component of love. One is caring, the second one is letting go. And so the 4 events that the Buddha said was inevitably tragic teach us about love. So I accept the premise that tragic events will lead to love if you see it the right way. Then I said, okay, now I can enter rehabilitation medicine. See, Dr. Pratap, you influence many, many people, maybe without even being 100% aware of it. Because as I enter the rehabilitation field, every patient that I contact with, I teach this to them. One day, they're walking, they're doing things they've always done before. They've had 100% ability and 100% capacity to do everything they wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, just like that, tragedy occurs. Okay, whether they dove off the shallow end of a pool, whether they were in a tragic accident, whether they were just standing in the middle of Newark and a stray bullet ricocheted off a stop sign and hit them. Whatever the cause, a tragedy changed their lives forever. And they need to ask why. Many of them are depressed to the point where they can't do rehab. They cannot continue to try to improve their lives. But trying to have them see things a little bit differently helps tremendously. In the beginning, they can't accept that, but as time goes on, they begin to understand that, yes, tragedy can equal love. It brings out love from people and also brings love from them. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so we have now tragic events leading requires rehabilitation. All right, and we started with life is tragic, and then tragedy leads to love, and then tragic events require rehab. And today's workshop, I'd like to add one more thing, that Tai Chi, okay, as we're going to be talking about today, is rehab. We are all constantly doing rehab. We are all, I want to convince you within the 2 hours, doing rehab. We are all recovering from something. All right? It's not just the individual who's in a wheelchair or who just had a spinal cord injury or who had a brain injury who's doing rehab, but we all are. We're all trying to better ourselves. We're all trying to improve. The fact that you're sitting here is a prime example. In fact, the people at Kessler Institute call us, the staff who are walking around, the temporary abled individuals. Okay? They may be permanently disabled, but to them, the day before they were admitted to the hospital, they were walking around, they were talking, they were just like us. Now they're paralyzed from the neck down, or have other sort of tragedies. And so to them, you know, these things can happen to all of us, though we don't really think about these things. None of us have a crystal ball, but I don't know what's going to happen to me tomorrow. So I'm constantly working with what nervous system I have to try to improve that. And so, as long as we're in an Institute of Higher Education, if you take these premises and you basically just take out the common terms. For example, tragic is here and also here, so you just eliminate the common terms. Rehab is here and here. Really, what you get, final equation is love. Here, now you have life equals love equals Tai Chi. All right? Now, love is in everything, but today, since we're focused in these two topics of Tai Chi and rehab, what I would like to do is to use this as an example of how Tai Chi, as well as life, can lead to love, and how that's correlated to rehabilitation medicine. So we use this as a model to bring out, so we can bring this home as a process on how we can review everything else in our lives to show that love can be in everything. Took me about 4 years to figure that out, so I really have to thank Dr. Pratap for your wisdom, and I'm spreading this concept to all my patients, and I hope it helps them. Okay.